Hello, everyone. On today's conversation on pause, we'll be assessing Nigeria's democratic journey since 1999. That's the start of the Fourth Republic. We'll be talking about the symbol of democracy. That's Chief MKO Abiola. His June 12th struggle and how Nigeria has fared since his death. With me to discuss this topic today is a veteran journalist, multiple award winner, and publisher of Ovation International, and the former presidential aspirant also. His name is Dele Momodu. Welcome to the show, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. I was actually a presidential candidate in 2011 and a presidential aspirant in 2023.
All right. Thanks for the explanation, sir. Today's episode features a very fine blend of the old, maybe not so old, and not too young, and probably the youth. So I also have with me here the director of content, Pause Nigeria, Dami Dawson.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Dami, for coming to the show. I also have Adeola. She's a content writer at Pause.
Thank you for having me.
Adeola.
Thank you, sir.
So I also have with me Olaoluwa is a broadcaster, and she's also hosted political forums in the past, right?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to the show, Adeola.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Nice meeting you, Adeola.
Thank you.
All right. Let's get into the conversation. So June 12th, when I was way younger, unfortunately, I was not around. Maybe I should say fortunately, considering how the events panned out after the June 12th thing. So we used to hear June 12th, but June 12th seems to mean different things to a whole lot of people. For people of your generation, it means something different entirely. And I think this is an opportunity, a brilliant opportunity for us to get to know from your own perspective, from someone who was part of the old June 12th struggle, right from the campaign you were with Chief MKO Abiola. What does June 12th mean to you?
If I have to tell you the full story, we will be here maybe till tomorrow morning. But I'll try to capture it, summarize it, and encapsulate what transpired on June 12, 1993. Because when we say June 12, some people might not even know that it goes back to 1993. But let me take you back even before 1993. Chief MKO Abiola was the biggest brand in Africa and Nigeria in particular. He was known as the pillar of sports. He was a serial entrepreneur. He had been a corporate titan. He was president of the Nigerian Stock Exchange at the time, the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria. He invested heavily in telecoms. He invested heavily in agriculture. He owned the Adeola Farms Limited. He owned Concord Airlines,
Adeola Babes Football Club.
Adeola Babes Football Club. So he was known to everyone, and he was probably the most generous man alive at the time. You would hardly go to his house and come back empty-handed. He knew how to take care of people around him. So he was very popular, and he was going to translate this personal generosity of his into governmental generosity. He believed, in fact, he once told us that your money, no matter how wealthy you are, cannot take care of the needs of everybody. So he needed to now go into government, get power to empower Nigerians at large, especially the poor people of Nigeria. That was his mission in politics. I knew as far back as 1981 that he was interested in the presidency of Nigeria. He was a member of the National Party of Nigeria, NPN, at the time.
That was 12 years before 1993.
12 years before 1993. He was the most prepared. He was very well prepared for the presidency. So his winning the presidency was not a fluke.
If you would allow me to interject you, sir. a lot of events happened in Nigerian history between that period you just mentioned and 1993. We had two coup d'etat. There was one, okay, I think the first one happened in 1981, which brought 1983, which brought General Muhammadu Buhari, and then General Babangida came and toppled him. So there have been a lot of insinuations that those coups that happened before the 1993 election actually had Chief MKO Abiola's imprint over them because of his ambition to become the president. And a lot of people are of the opinion that this was also one of the reasons why the military refused to hand over power to him. We'll still get into that conversation of why they didn't hand over power to him. But as someone who was very close to MKO, like you said, you knew about his ambition 12 years even before the election. How would you react to such insinuations?
Well, don't forget that from around 1966, we had so many coups in Nigeria. So if you were a businessman, who were the people that you will be doing business with? It's the leadership
of the country,
whether they are civilians or they are military. So, and as I said, he was the most generous man. He was very lively, very vivacious. He was not a boring character. Everybody liked Adeola. I remember when his wife died in 1992. All our military leaders were there. Babangida was crying. General Abacha, I think it was GOC 2nd Mechanized Division in Ibadan at the time, in November, 1992, which was just some weeks to my wedding at that time. Wow. So, if people insinuated, I don't have any proof or evidence that he sponsored any, but being one of the richest men at the time and being close to Babangida in particular, yes, if people insinuated that he sponsored them, it is possible. In fact, they insinuated it elsewhere that he was one of those who funded Museveni, the current president of Uganda. So he's been, and I've traveled with him a bit to other parts of Africa, like Senegal, where he was held in absolute awe. People really liked him, and as a pillar of sport. So anyway, to cut the long story short,
yes, sir,
he was frustrated out of the MPN in 1981 when they said the presidency was not for sale, that he couldn't use his money to buy the presidency. So he left, and I think he went back to the drawing board. That was the period I started. Notice the first time I met him was 1981. I came as a student. I was in part 3 at the then University of Ife, now Mayowa University. I came with a couple of my friends and we met them at the National Convention of the MPN at the National Theatre in Lagos. But it was very brief. Then, as God will have it, in 1988, I joined the African Concord magazine, as a staff writer. And I was there for the next 2 years. And that was where I distinguished myself as a writer. And it came across my bylines everywhere. Who is this Dele Momodu? He had about 8 different publications. And I was writing for 5. I was employed by 1. But because of my personal ambition and the dream to be a successful journalist, I was just everywhere. I was a serial writer. And that was how I met him. So, coming now to 1993, I had predicted around 1991 to him directly that I knew he's still nursing the ambition. I actually wrote him a letter. This must have been, I think, December 20, 1991. I wrote him a letter that I believe he would run. And that if he should run, he should please join the party of his people. And he requested that they should bring me over to his house on Moshood Abiola Crescent off to his street. And I went there. And that was the day he declared openly to the media that I'm his adopted son, and that was it. So he asked me, Dele Kilori, what have you seen? And I gave him my analysis. I was very young. I was about 31.
Wow.
At the time, yes. And I'd always been very bold. So he said, Kilori, so I said, look, the reason I want you to join the party of your people is that even if you lose election, you will not lose your people. And that's what happened with him joining the SDP. Traditionally, he would have joined NRC. But he joined PDP. And I believe I was partly responsible for that, opportunity for him to join the party of his people. But the June 12 itself, he prepared well for it. Because he declared his interest end of January 1993. It was a very tight race. And 2 months after, in March, we were in Jos for the SDP primary. And he was able to defeat the other contestants like Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Babagana Kingibe.
Who
Alhaji Atiku Abubakar was asked to step down for him by his own godfather, Major General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua. And he did so, went away quietly. We thought he was going to pick Atiku as running mate, as compensation for stepping down for him. But the governors refused. They insisted their man was Kingibe and he should pick Kingibe. And that's why he picked.
So it was pretty much a party decision.
It was a party decision.
Okay.
And anybody who knew Abiola knew that he was a Democrat to the core. He tries to carry everyone along. For me, maybe unfortunately, I wasn't even at home on June 12th because Chief Abiola had sent me to Vienna in Austria to present a letter of congratulations to Chief Ganifa Wehimi, who was receiving the Bruno Kreisky Award in Vienna on June 11, a day to the election. So there was no way, since I didn't have a private jet, there was no way I could make it back. So on June 12th, I left Austria for London, from where I was monitoring the election. We didn't have a proliferation of telephones like we do today, so you have to call someone to get someone, and on Sunday, June 13th, I called the Concord newspapers, to ask how chairman was doing. And they said, oh no, chairman was coasting home to victory. And so I was very confident that very soon we will have Abiola as the president-elect of Nigeria. Then on June 14th, Monday, I called Prince Nduka Obagbena, the current publisher of this day newspaper and the chairman of the Arise television and all that. So I called him and he said, Dele, I've been looking for you. Where are you? I said, I am in London. He said, please, I should reach Abiola urgently because Abiola would win the election, but the military will not give it to him. That was the first signal, an alert of danger that something was going to go wrong. But I didn't believe him. I thought, were
there any signs that things were going to turn out this way pre the election?
Oh, yes, of course. They didn't want the election to hold.
Obviously,
the military didn't want the election. So there were manipulations. Some people went to court. You remember Chief Arthur Nzeribe at that time, Tumba Abibola Davis. They had a group that wanted to stop the election. But Adeola too was a big player. He understood. Because I remember the night I was leaving Nigeria to Austria, which was June 9th. I left in the evening on British Airways to London. And on my way to the airport, he said I should see him. He wanted to give me some money. So I went to the house, and the house characteristically was empty. There was nobody. You never find Abiola's house empty. But everywhere was empty. So I went upstairs and saw only one man sitting down in the living room with him. And then he called me into the bedroom and said, look at that man, he's a spy. they sent him here to come and find out the mood. So I had to deceive them.
So you needed to create a different kind of mood.
So are you sure you're going to win the election? I told him it's impossible. No, Bashir Tofa is the winner. So for me, that was the first indication that something was going wrong. So he said that man, as you see him sitting down there, it's all wired up, meaning that he was carrying a lot of gadgets and all that. So, and I said, well, Chief, I wish you the best of luck. So I'm going to the airport, and he gave me the money he wanted to give me, and I left. So that was the first indication that these guys were desperate. They even got an injunction in the middle of the night to stop the election from holding. Nigeria has suffered a lot.
We'll get there, but so that the younger generations don't feel let out of this conversation. So let me bring the conversation to this side. Can you tell us, Adeola, when was the first time you heard of June 12th, and what was your impression when you heard June 12th?
June 12th is not something that, for my generation, is not something that we're born with. It's something that we hear of as we're growing up. I mean, June 12th came first to me, probably from school. We're taught in civic education. And then thereafter, I realized that June 12th is way beyond what we're taught in social studies or civic education. June 12th is the basis of Nigerian democracy. June 12th is something that generations after generations, presidency after presidency, whatnot, would always refer to, because it is a significant date for the democratic what do I call it? But exactly, for the democratic journey of Nigeria. So it is not just something that we were taught in classrooms. It's something that, as you grow older, from history, from experiences, you would learn.
From the things you read from history, were you able to resonate with the mood at the time? When you heard that, for instance, in the 2023 presidential election, there were calls for INEC to also did something like a June 12 in 1993 to annul the election and organize another one. So can you relate that experience to when you heard of June 12? Can you picture it? Does it resonate in that manner?
Yes, it resonates. But for the 2023 elections, it will be at a different angle. Because for the 1993 elections, it was sure. I don't want to use the word sure, but it was obvious that this candidate, MKO Abiola, was the winner. And for the fact that he amassed the larger amount of votes, larger percentage of votes, and it was not just something about irregardless of the religion, the ethnicity,
it got support from everywhere,
which
and
is
religious
till today
lines.
Probably still the only election in Nigeria where that much support has been garnered. So I think I would be able to resonate, but not to a larger extent.
Okay, thank you. Dami, your June 12 experience, what was it like?
So I was born just some years before the June 12, 1993 elections. So I was just a little kid, so I probably did not know what's going on. my folks probably just figured out the most of the things out. But growing up, you get to realize that June 12 was the moment for actual hope, for Nigeria, and you see that it was the moment for redefinition, recalibration. It was a moment for we're done. Because before then we had like a decade rule of the military, and we had a lot of things that happened. Babangida's SAP thing happened, and there was unemployment. There was a lot of things going wrong. So June 12 was like a moment for, this is a new Nigeria. So that is mostly what a lot of us grew up with. And I'm hearing about MKO Abiola. Sadly, I never got to meet him personally. But I've seen tapes, because my dad kept some tapes, and I'd seen videos on social media platforms. You'd see the man was just a very happy man. Even just by looking at him physically, it didn't seem like someone that has troubles or that stress. He just wanted to do his own beat and just, be good.
Like today's governor, Dele. he used to sing, he used to dance.
Abiola used to dance?
Yes. In fact, at the stage, he was an Ogidigbo singer, drummer, he enjoyed life.
It was just like, and everything he had in his Hope 93 thing, everything he wanted to do with changing the economy, with education, free, just some things that a lot of people say that Tinubu sort of replicated, and to be honest, it's true, because I sort of just compared the manifestos and I just saw it was the similarities is very large, it's the same thing, but
even the slogan,
renewed hope. Yeah. So for me, for those that do not know who MKO was a beacon of hope. And this is not hearsay. I'm not saying this because it's a show that we have to just let people understand. I think the younger ones need to understand who MKO Abiola was, beyond what they've heard. Who better to tell them that, Mr. Dele?
All right, thank you for that. Let me ask you, you've interviewed people. I know you've had conversations about June 12. June 12. Yeah. So from your conversation about June 12, how would you describe the events of June 12 from your conversations, from the conversation that you heard? Like, you've talked to different people, they've said, they've given you accounts based on their own perspectives. So what would you, I mean, you have diverse opinions.
Okay, so I mean, the conversation I would like to highlight about June 12 was the one I had with my father, not necessarily the one I had, because I was also pretty young around that period as well. But he talked about how on the election day, so many people came out to vote. He talked about how, a number of people were anticipating the results. People were out on the street. And, so he talked about how people were really excited. That was one of the best periods in the history of Nigeria. People were really excited. Not like what we have now, where you literally have to beg people, voter apathy, buy their vote. People sincerely came out to vote. And I mean, that's one thing I can remember from one thing. They never really had to beg people at that point in time. And that's why, for me, June 12 now is not something I'm really very excited about, because, I mean, we have set that as a standard for our democracy. But unfortunately, the conversations we're having right now are how free and fair are our elections. If we eventually come out to vote like we all did in June 12, 1993, would it count? Would it matter? Because a number of people felt like during the 2023 presidential election, which I think is an election that a number of the candidates also, they try to replicate the June 12 experience. In fact, someone had like a renewed hope. Literally, its manifesto was literally like a copy of that. And there was also another candidate that a number of people also placed side by side. It felt like it was also generally accepted by the people, and it was not really about any ethnic group, because that was one thing that people also singled out about late Chief MKO Abiola. It was like a unifying factor. Yes. And unfortunately, I mean, the last election, it was almost as if they tried to make it about ethnicity. I don't know how that happened between June 12 and now. But unfortunately, the conversations, the fears people have right now is that if we all come out to vote, I mean, some people even feel we came out to vote. In fact, the 2023 election was one of those elections that I felt like I participated in the most, not just as a broadcaster, a journalist, but as an electorate. I came out, I voted. I saw the pride people had in coming out to vote. I saw people who came out to vote, and despite the fact that they felt like some people might come here and harass us, but they still came out to vote. Some people were harassed. Some people were outrightly stopped from, voting, but people still came out. And that's the fear. A number of people till today still doubt the results of that election. So I feel
that was not the case with the Abiola election,
which was not. So, I mean, I think we've come a long way. And interestingly, June 12 now will now always be the day that we compare the other election to the 1993 election. And so far, it has, the comparison has not measured up. And that's what keeps ringing in my ears.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. So we've talked about, I think everybody has said, Abiola won across religion and ethnic lines. It means his message resonated with everybody, regardless of their religion, regardless of ethnicity. So, as someone who was very close to the late MKO, why do you think his message resonated? Hope 93. I think that was the slogan there. There was Hope 93.
Yeah, because a man in his personal capacity had given hope to the hopeless. He didn't know me from Adam. I came from Ile-Ife in search of greener pastures in Lagos, got a job in his office, and then discovered my talent. He nurtured it, and I grew with it. So he had touched too many lives. All the top journalists in Nigeria, I'm sure about 90% of them, at one time or the other, passed through MKO Abiola, from Dele to Eku to Yakubu Mohammed, and all of them. All the big guys passed through Concord at one stage or the other. So people liked him. It was very natural in his dealings with people. If he offended you, he was ready to offer apologies. He had issues, for example, with the late Chief Bafemi Awolowo, and who was a god of the Yorubas in his own right. And he went there to apologize to him. And he didn't just behave like a Yoruba man. He had friends cutting across political parties, in every part, in every region of Nigeria. So his impact was felt. He was a Muslim who built churches for people, who donated libraries, who built, pipe-borne water, who created the Adeola farms. Adeola Farms was in Ogun State. Adeola Farms was in Kwara, in Lafiaji. Adeola Farms was in Taraba, in Dhaka. In Taraba, he had the biggest rice mills. Adeola was ahead of his time. So if a man had done that in his private capacity, people believe that, so what will he do if we make him our president? And that's why today it's difficult. You see people now in government who call themselves billionaires, but you cannot point at anything they did other than politics, before they became billionaires. So people now are vocational politicians, let me put it that way.
What without venture?
Nothing. They did nothing. And they boast openly that I'm this, I am that, when it is obvious that you did not. So Adeola was not that kind of character. He was naturally loved. And it's a monumental tragedy that we lost such a man, that we never. And then speaking about unity, it was a unifying factor. Everybody voted for him. It wasn't just his own people. Today, it will be difficult for people outside your immediate ethnic environment supporting you the way people supported MKO Abiola. And we must find a way to go back to those days when unity mattered and ethnicity mattered less.
And even religion. Because
he picked
a Muslim as his running mate. And it was not an issue then. What we had in 2023.
No, because he was also a liberal. I'll give you an example. We used to have a nightclub that was very popular in those days, the Night Shift Coliseum, in Okwebi. And so the owner of the club, we call him the Governor Caleb Zulumese, contacted me and he said he wanted Abiola during the campaigns that he wanted Abiola to appear in the club. It had never happened before. And then a Muslim, for that matter, coming to a nightclub at night where people are smoking and drinking. And I told Chief, and he actually accepted to come.
Wow.
And he came. And after that, a few weeks after that, the club wanted Baba Gana Kingibe also to come as the running mate. And he accepted initially, and suddenly he developed good faith. I called me and said, I can't go into nightclub, my people will call me. And then I had to go and report to Adeola, and Adeola called him and said, Baba, are you more Muslim than me? Life there was so easy. And we brought in Kingibe into the club.
Yeah.
These days, such things, people will frown at it because everybody is playing either the ethnic game or the religious game, and so it was fun. It was fun. Politics then, and the MKO is our man. Even the jingles were very lively. We still remember it vividly till today. Nowadays people just tell lies, just go there to just campaign, just say whatever and go. It's like you are marking time. Yeah, you got to be shaken. Let's go. That kind of thing. So we hope that those days of what I call political jamborees will come back, where it's a festival. It's a festival of ideas. It was a festival of culture. Unlike now, that is a matter of life and death.
Sorry to cut you short, but some Nigerians have said maybe the reason why the civilians back then, that's the Nigerians, why they were united behind politicians was because we had a military ruler.
No. It was because you had politicians whose background we understood. We knew everything. There was nothing hidden. We knew that MKO Abiola, he told his story copiously and endlessly.
But we cannot also rule out the fact that when there is a military regime, the citizens usually sort of come together to be the main opposition against such a government. But in a democracy, everybody wants to fight for an interest. So would you say this manner of democracy is a bit divisive?
No, I don't think much has changed. Seriously, I don't think In fact, one of the things I like to say these days is that it's like we have replaced military dictatorship with civilian dictatorship because a lot of our politicians now are even more dictatorial than the military was.
Sure.
That's the truth. The old people can say, oh, military was draconian, military was this. The same thing is going if you intimidate your opponents, how are you different from being a military man?
Yeah.
So,
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
You know, I asked, were you a discerning kid under a military rule? Because I lived under a military rule and I was a discerning kid in 1994. I could remember Abacha stove. That was how bad things were. Like, did you experience as a kid, did you experience what it was to live under a military rule?
I was quite young, really, to be honest. But I heard about how people were a bit more disciplined. There were decrees and, people were a bit more fearful. I understood that. But I also agree with him that I feel like regardless of any system of government, people who want power will always find a way around it. And I think it has happened to our democracy. I mean, people just will find a way around the system to just have power and use power as they say. If the people don't do anything about it.
yeah.
What about you, Dami? What do you think?
I was born under Babangida era. So, and if for anything, I know that the thing with the structural adjustment program that he sort of initiated affected a number of things. As a matter of fact, people say that it's the backbone or it's the birth of the problems that we are currently facing in Nigeria. So for me, I would not say, yes, there was some level of, maybe decorum in quotes, but then it's not exactly different from what is happening now. Just that they're not wearing the suits anymore, they're not wearing the caps. They're not wearing, natives, or they're wearing their traditional, but it's still the same persons, in my opinion. And it's quite disappointing that those that don't even have the military background are behaving like
military. Correct.
So, yeah.
Let me ask you, because some people in your generation are calling for the return of the military.
they never met it. So
they never experienced the military.
Yes.
But from what you've said so far,
It's just the frustration, I believe.
so
Maybe like you said, maybe it's the frustration. What you've not experienced, you probably just have pictures or images in your mind saying, okay, maybe if we're in a military regime, it would be better. That's what I think is happening with my generation. And the only thing I can say of the military regime is from what we've read, the aspect of decorum. People were more organized. There were certain things that in a civilian government we wouldn't do. We wouldn't have the liberty if we have a military government. We wouldn't have the liberty to do certain things which are probably wrong. So I think my generation wanting the military regime is just because we've not experienced it. I mean, this generation is a generation that is very much adventurous. So if for instance we come tomorrow and say, okay, we will have a military regime for about 6 months, I'm pretty sure that there are people in my generation who would say, oh, let's have it, because we just want to experience it.
let's give that.
Well, if I could add to that, I don't think it's just your generation. Even in my own generation, I knew how people used to long for someone like Jerry John Rawlings. Because they heard that Rawlings came, he killed the oppressors, he killed the president, and then that was how Ghana had the revolution. So we used to call him...
That was their own revolution.
Yeah, that was their own revolution. And then we used to call him Junior Jesus. Those who experienced him called him Junior Judas.
That's a contrast.
Yes.
But for those who didn't experience
an average Nigerian, if I went on radio in Ghana once and I told them, I said, look, some of you say you hate Rawlings. Oh, Nigerians, just borrow us for 6 months.
They adore it.
Just like she said, we'll be very happy to just borrow us. We need someone who can help us, kill our oppressors, because we're all helpless.
Not even when you have all kinds of information flying around about Ibrahim Traore.
You can see how people love Traore right now. It's the same thing. People are so enchanted.
But most of those things are propaganda, though. But I understand.
No, but that's how it starts. It's from propaganda, and it's dangerous. That's why our politicians must behave. Because when they misbehave, then people then begin to romanticize the military, which is very reckless and irresponsible. We went through it. I was in detention in 1993, and I know what I went through, sleeping in detention. But the young people today just want anything but everything. You know, so I don't know.
We'll still talk about your detention experience. let's take the conversation to the main actor, the brain behind the annulment. That's General Babangida. In his book that he released, I think last year, he confirmed what many Nigerians already knew, anyways, that Chief Abiola won the election. So, do you think that admission is enough to heal the wounds, considering the atrocities that ensued after the annulment? Do you think that apology is enough?
No, I actually granted a few interviews after the release of that book because I had expected that I was going to offer full and unconditional apologies that day. Apologies to Nigeria and Nigerians, apologies to the Abiola family, apologies to other families that were battered, maimed, killed, or sent into exile. I was in exile for 3 years. I couldn't enter Nigeria for 3 years, from 1995 to 1998.
I read that you had to disguise
you
had to slip through Benin Republic.
Yes, like a farmer into Cotonou, from Cotonou to Lomé, cross the Aflau border into Ghana. In fact, I'll be celebrating the 30th anniversary of my escape from Nigeria on July 20th.
Invite me.
I was a young man. I was 35. My first son was under 1 year old. So you can imagine the agony, the anguish, the trauma, leaving your wife and your first child, early in the morning and traveling all the way through Badagry to Cotonou. It was an experience I will never forget. So we went through all that, and I pray.
And that apology, and that admission without apology.
Yeah, so saying, we need Adeola actually won. Fantastic. It was good. But we all knew that. That was not is it news? I will tell you what's strange about news. News is something extraordinary. And the reason they call it news is that it comes from the word new. So it has to be fresh. So there was nothing fresh about that admission. So, but what would have been fresher was for Baba to say, me, I personally forgiven him. Me, I'm a Christian. And my religion teaches me to forgive, unconditionally. But I expected I would have seized the opportunity. And I will continue to plead to him that please don't go to heaven without apologizing to Nigerians. You must apologize to Nigerians. It doesn't cost anything. You don't lose anything by apologizing. That's what Abiola would have done if Abiola was in his shoes. If you offend a whole country and the entire people of Nigeria, I think it's only fair enough to say, I messed up. I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Even if some people will still insist they won't forgive you, that's their business. Yes. At least you would have purged yourself. It's what they call atonement of sins. So I'm still expecting that atonement will come sooner than later.
He didn't even, take responsibility for that annulment because he
took responsibility. He was now giving other excuses, but he took responsibility that yes, I was the one who annulled it, but because of certain conditions, I thought that was when we lost it. If I was one of his speech writers, I would have insisted that I must include apologies in that speech.
Maybe we'll get a second edition.
Oh yeah, why not? No, he's a man that you must give something to him. Extremely clever.
Yeah. So, hence the nickname.
Yeah, we used to call him Maradona.
Yeah, that's Maradona because he kept giving us. For you read the book, right? I mean, you read that part.
I read that part.
Does this resolve anything for you? Well,
it is a wound that would probably never heal. Because people already have it pictured, it is etched in their mind that this is how it will be forever. I remember years ago, I was in a public transport and then it was during election time and public transport, people would always say one thing or the other. And there was a woman behind me. She said in Yoruba, she said it that she wouldn't vote. She stopped voting after June 12. Imagine, and she was an elderly woman. Imagine somebody of that age who I'm very sure probably have kids, have family members. You know what she would have preached to them, what she would have planted to them. I mean, if for instance, I have parents who do not believe in democracy, they don't believe in elections or whatnot.
Based off the June 12
Based
events.
off the June 12 event, my parents are people who I would look up to. People who I would probably, imitate their behaviors, imitate whatever it is that they're doing.
You imbibe their teachings.
Exactly. So if I am a daughter of that woman, what I would have in me is that it is not necessary. It's not worth it. So it is a wound, like I said before, it's a wound that would probably not heal for a lot of Nigerians.
That's it.
For me, you need to understand that what IBB has done is not going to change anything. Right? It's notable that it's come out to say this is what happened, but it's not sufficient, because people would say that the reward for certain things like this is true justice. You have to understand what happened to Nigeria after that annulment, the unrest for a number of years that led up to the death of
Adeola, his wife,
even to his own death, and to a number of anomalies in Nigeria. So it's not something you just. I mean, it led to Abacha coming into government, and that's even another conversation. So if you look at the repercussion of the annulment, you see that. I mean, yeah, the book is good, and saying that what happened, but it's not enough. Like I said, that's why I said it's insufficient. It is notable that it's come out to tell people what has happened, but it doesn't hold water. You understand? Because the repercussions, the evils, the wickedness has happened after the annulment. Who's going to heal it? You know what I'm saying? So those are things that I believe, should also take into consideration. I mean, his reason for annulling, one of the reasons he gave was that some guys were planning coup against Abiola and everything. I'm like, well, bro, you've gone through.
and that was hypothetical.
So for me, it's just unfortunate what it is, but true justice is what should be the reward for things like this, and not just the book.
And I agree with that, because that is why a number of people in Nigeria still don't believe in democracy, because they'll tell you that if something like that happened in 1993, some people announced the election, and this is 2025. Nothing happened. Nobody was prosecuted for it. The number of elections we've had since then, people snatching ballot boxes and all, people still find it difficult to understand how were they punished? What did they get for it? So if we're going to continue to recycle this practice of people tamper with our elections, we can't see a very grave punishment happen for them. Maybe they come years later on and apologize. And but they can't even say this is an apology.
It's not apology.
But then, and everybody just feels like, if they can do it, we can do it. And unfortunately, they can get away with it. There's no consequence for that action. Unfortunately, another June 12, will keep coming. And it's beginning to look like all politicians just want to do is they just want everybody will come together. We're going to have an event. We'll talk about how fantastic democracy is. We'll talk about late Chief MKO Abiola. But people are not practicing true democracy. It's almost as if we're not learning anything from it. But there's no need to learn anything from it. There's no thing to need to pick any fear. I mean, we all can continue to tamper with our democracy and nothing happens.
Still on that trajectory, would you say people's misgivings about the 2023 election sort of reinforced that notion that it's not what is participating in Nigerian elections? Like how the 2023 election panned out, a lot of, going by the result alone.
See, I host like daily radio programs where we talk about, there's no time we have any reasonable political conversation on any of my shows that we do not get to that point where people talk about the 2023 election. So many Nigerians have not moved on. So many Nigerians
Do you
have
think
not
that
moved.
might affect voter turnout in 2027?
Of course it will, but the thing now is that we cannot give up. We cannot afford to give up. Because then, especially if we want to continue to practice democracy is nothing without the people. democracy is about the people. So the moment the people fold their arms and say that, they are discouraged or so, I mean, Nigeria becomes whatever it is, it is.
Yeah. It talked about not giving up. If Chief Abiola were to be alive today, what do you think he would have done? And what are the things you think he would advocate for? Restructuring, reforms, corruption, anti-corruption campaign, and stuff like that. Considering where we find ourselves, and the man you knew, Chief MKO Abiola. So what would he have done if he were alive today?
Well, he died in 1998, so which means we've done almost 30 years since he died. And all the issues at stake then are still very much around with us.
Even more.
Yes.
If not worse.
Yes, no worse, yeah.
Insecurity is worse.
Yeah.
The education has collapsed. Poverty. His manifesto then in 1993 was Farewell to Poverty. That was the title of his manifesto. And now we have, in fact, the mother or if not grandmother of poverty at this time. So I am sure Abiola would have addressed the issue of poverty because of something we share in common is the folklore, the Yoruba folklore. If you remove hunger out of poverty, poverty would collapse. And that is why it's focused on, apart from the Abiola farms, he owned a bakery at that time called Wonder Loaf Bakery. And at the point I was a distributor of that bread. So food security would have been top of the agenda. Education, it will tell you that without education, it would not have made it in life. Health care, what is the point if you have all the money in the world, but you can't even go to a decent hospital, So these are some of the issues he would have addressed, and he would have made sure that, government agencies function properly. Part of the problem we have today is that every ministry you go, you visit today, everything is in total disarray. And people, all they are doing is collecting their bribes under the table, and even sometimes openly and frontally. They don't hide it any longer. All these issues would have been addressed by Abiola, I believe. But unfortunately, it seems we're back to square one, if not worse.
To add to what you just said, I believe that one of his main focus would also be unity. Because the result, or I wouldn't say the result, the whole scenario or whatever it is for has now brought Nigeria to a stage that even till now, present day 2025, there is no unity, there's no cordial relationship between the whole of Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria stands as a whole, but deep down, we're not one. There's no togetherness.
No,
yes. So I am sure that, because I read an article where you said MKO Abiola would be surprised at the present state of Nigeria. So I'm sure that unifying Nigeria would also be one of the main things that you would
pursue.
Want to pursue. Yeah.
Interesting. Talking about what MKO could have done, you were with our current president, Adeola in the trenches,
yes,
for the struggle for the realization of the June 12 mandate, and then he anchored his government on renewed hope. Do you think he can deliver on these promises? Considering the fact that he's also one of the disciples of MKO Abiola.
Well, that's a very tricky question because it's obvious that I am not in his party, I'm not in APC, and naturally I may be biased. And I believe I am biased. It's good for me to make that confession and open declaration. I am embarrassed about what APC is doing to Nigeria. And I'm not talking about the economy, I'm not talking about the insecurity, I'm talking about the fundamental, basic principle of democracy. I think our democracy is endangered at the moment, and we should all continue to appeal to our politicians to please take it easy with Nigeria. Because with that platform, that foundation of democracy, everything else will collapse.
During your own time, you were what we can call a rebel. You rebelled against the military government. So do you think Nigerian youths today...
I'm still a rebel. I've rebelled against the Tinubu's government. Tinubu is my friend, is my big brother.
I know you disagreed me a couple of days ago.
No, that's Adeleke.
But you posted a photo.
I post, I'm a journalist.
You said you were with...
No, not me.
Okay.
Not me. I deliberately avoid going to certain places these days because of this kind of people misconstruing my mission. If I go there, it wants an appointment. I don't want any appointment, and I'm using this opportunity to say it again and again that I won't go. I don't want them to add my name to the name of the visitors. The Spain doctors will now come out and say, we told you now, Adele to have joined them. Just see me, forgetting that once upon a time was my friend. So deliberately, I will make that sacrifice. I supported Buhari in 2015. For 8 years, I openly declared that no, the man is misleading us and is leading us to Golgotha. So if I can do that for 8 years, I've already survived 2 years of Tinubu now. The first time, 2 years to go. If time flies.
So back to my question. Do you think Nigerian youths are doing enough, protesting enough, considering what your generation did to the military back then?
Well, that's another dicey question. I don't want to blame people for what is not entirely their fault. The youth of our nowadays have so much to grapple with that it will be asking for too much to ask them to go on the street. In our time, things were much better. We had bursary awards, we had everything. My first baptism of fire was in 1978. I was a pioneer Jambite in 1970. We were the first set of Jambites. And at that time, just before we entered the university, there was what we call Ali Must Go riot. It was heavy, and we felt the tremor nationwide. Today, it will be difficult for anybody to organize another Ali Must Go riot because a man who is totally hungry, a man who does not even know how he will survive till tomorrow morning, you ask that person to go on the street, how does he move from point A to point B? That time, daily food was 10 kobo in the morning, 20 in the afternoon, 20, 50 kobo daily. And they increased it to 50, 50, 50. That's what led to that riot. So today, you can't even say it as quadrupled. I don't know how I would qualify it. So for people to feed, and so I won't blame the youth of nowadays. And those, even look at Lagos, that SARS, look at what people went through. Till today, the scars are still there. The deep wounds are still there. Some people have been forgotten. Some people died without a trace. You understand? So how do you want their family to? So if anybody, you want to go out now, you want to go out, your family will say, it's better for you to be jobless at home than you to go and die on the street.
During your own time, the people in your generation, they sort of got creative with how they carried out their protest. I could remember Radio Freedom, Radio Kudrat, popularly known as Radio Kudrat. It was a very ingenious move that really put the fire on the military. And the military couldn't really figure it out because they didn't know where they were operating from. So those kind of initiatives, what do you think Nigerian youth can come up with without necessarily exposing themselves to danger?
My brother, what we had at that time was monumental. June 12th was monumental. And the whole of Nigeria, including those who did not like Abiola, knew that something fundamental had gone wrong. And even the international community pitied us at that time. Today, I'm not sure if they themselves will not even encourage more crises so that they can take away our resources, At that time, I was a part of Radio Freedom, not at the beginning, but when I got into exile. So I had a pseudonym Saliu Elenugboro Adeola. That was my name on that radio. I ran the Yoruba programs for that radio.
I heard former Governor Fayemi was also
Yes,
part of the
Fayemi
group.
was coordinator.
The coordinator.
And we had guys, Richard Dio Johnson, unfortunately he passed on, my good friend George Noah and a few others. And so we operated by telephone. So there was no way you could trace anything. This transmitter itself was in a Scandinavian country. I don't know if they've mentioned it publicly. So by telephone, we were doing shortwave radio and we were able to transmit. So 15 minutes to going on air, they will call me, be on standby, and then they phone me on my telephone and I will read my news, in my Yoruba news. Orúkọ mi ni Saliu Elenugboro ẹni Ọlọ́run pa ìròyìn fún àṣálẹ́ yìí ní kíníkan. It was, we did it, we volunteered, we were not paid for it, and we could have been killed if captured by the Abacha goons. But we survived, and God compensated me with ovation.
What kind of initiatives do you think Nigerian youth could come up with? Something very similar.
I'm not sure if anyone tries it now, that the government would not come after you like bullets. Look at what happened to Nnamdi Kanu, for example. Nnamdi Kanu, what he was doing, fighting for Biafra, was almost similar to what we were doing when we were fighting against Abacha. But today he's in detention. And they had to get foreign government, you understand, to dump him and bounce him back to Nigeria. So we did what we could, but today they will call it treason. So they will call it treason, yeah.
You talked about NSAS. Your generation led the NSAS protests. Considering how the whole event turned out, the Lekki massacre, as we call it. So do you think that experience has sort of discouraged people from participating in protest? One, hold on to that. Then also, what do you think the youths, the people in your generation, could do more to put the government under intense pressure, apart from just, social media actions like talking, tweeting, and all stuff?
To answer your first question, yes, I would say it has discouraged a number of people from, taking further protests, because, we all saw the results of the NSAS protest in 2020 and how it ended for Nigerians, for Nigerian youths especially. Like you said, if such were to happen today, I'm pretty sure that my father would say, no, you're not going anywhere. Because, it has brought a wound, like he rightly said, a wound that would not heal. It would not. People who are supposed to go out now would remember, oh, I lost my friend. I lost my neighbor. I lost somebody. So they would be, in as much as that action is trying to silence Nigerian youth, we should not, to answer your second question now, we should not now relent by saying, oh, we will not carry out further action.
So do you think there are other approaches that could be deployed?
Presently, I do not know of other approaches. Yes.
That's being honest.
I do not know of other approaches because...
protest. It's unfortunate, but a lot of people would rather save their lives than go out to. Look at what happened when they wanted to do the remembrance for NSAS, and the government had like police and soldiers everywhere. First off, they scare you by bringing in tankers. You see soldiers everywhere. Some people were dogged enough to come out to still want to protest, but you were found a safer way to protest, which is social media. And it may not seem like it's doing the work, but it is safer in the sense that you could do or say a lot just from the comfort of your home.
But do people read and do they listen when they
you talk? Another interesting point to add to what you said, sir, politicians are now, or their agents are also on social media. So everybody is having their say.
Yes. You say something and somebody is there to counter it.
You have the troll now. 1,000 people will reply you with fake accounts.
Yes. Somebody is there to counter your point.
Yeah, they have the money to pay.
It's unfortunate, like I said before. Protest way back way back, I mean, you talk about Nadeko, you talk about the likes of Fela and you can and even this Tinubu was also part of this protest. It's
I'm not sure we allow a protest now.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So it's not going to allow. So I feel like what we have, the only option we have, it might not be the most viable option, but I think the safest option we have at the moment is still lending the voice via social media. While I understand that these people will come out, to say stuff, it happens everywhere. But we have to keep,
But anyway, what are the
stuff.
messages we are passing across on social media coming to you? So, I mean, we can talk, we can make videos about how horrible things are in the country. But what about the civic education aspect of it? Because a lot of people, I mean, there's apathy out there, voter apathy and all of that, but we still hold it to ourselves as a responsibility to encourage the citizens to still participate in electoral processes. What do we do? What should we do to put INEC under pressure to, for voter registration, electoral reforms? So beyond just talking on social media, what are the things we are advocating for?
And you've mentioned one of the things, civic education from primary school, secondary school. We need to intensify that. But you see, personally, I've gotten to a point in my life as a Nigerian that I think for now, I no longer believe in protests. This administration seems to have, they've hacked it. I mean, they know how to just decimate or diffuse whatever it is. You see, with one protest there's a pro-protest, there's an anti-protest to quickly water down the whole thing. So and that's why I agree that we need to get a little bit more creative. But my own recommendations would be that it's high time we now more than ever before, started focusing more on the very, very glamorous political positions. The president, the governor. The House of Rep members will determine what the electoral laws, and senators will determine what the electoral laws will be. These are the people that will determine whether they would impeach the president or not. There are so many other or impeach governors or not. There are so many other political positions. In fact, party structures. The number of young people that look at the last election, there was a candidate that got really popular for his personality, not really because of the party. But now we don't even understand what the party is up to right now. People are still a bit skeptical. Where is it going to? See, but young people need to get involved in political parties. And when we talk about young people, when we think youth, we always think a set of people are the youths of Nigeria. Because I still tell people that, see, as young people, we are not as united as we need to be. Whenever there's a protest, let's say an anti end bad governance protest, for example, you will see another set of youth. Young people, those people are not Ghanaian youths. They are not American youth. They're Nigerian. So we always think that, some of us, we think we are we forget that a larger population of Nigerian youths are not on the same page. They're not on the same page with whatever we are trying to achieve. So that unity element, unfortunately, I don't think that we should expect the government, the politicians to do that for us. Why? Because if you say there's a set of people, they benefit from the power that they hold, why would you expect them to just want to have a change of heart one day and just let go of that power and then just let go of the money and just let go? It has to be democracy is the government of the people, by the people. And it's not just for the people, it is by the people. And if we say we are young, we need a larger population of young people who are on the same page and we need to do that ourselves. Whatever it is we can do to convince, whatever it is that we can do to attract, no one is going to do it for us. We can pray all we want, we can beg our politicians all we want, but no one just wakes up in the morning, something is working for you, it sustains, it helps you to get generational wealth, you have your influence is sealed, and you just wake up and say,
I'm letting go.
let me just give it. You don't give it.
Yeah.
We have to take it.
Interesting. So we'll be running up very soon, but let's quickly relate these NSAS into the Japa wave that we witnessed yeah, the Japa wave that we witnessed. During the June 12 era, there were, of course, people that were in the campaign pro-democracy struggle left the country. But also there were also people who were not necessarily in the pro-democracy struggle, but due to the situation of the country, also had to leave. There was a wave back then whereby people left the country, and we are seeing a repeat of that since the end. Do you think it's the same pattern playing out all over again?
Well, in our time, things were not this bad. I left Nigeria, for example, in 1995. And I left London immediately after Adeola died. Despite the fact that I had a big company already in place, Ovation was established in 1996, I didn't want to stay. So that's why I said the situation now is far worse than then. We were not tempted to stay. A lot of us were in exile. We had a lot of big people. I remember playing Dele, I think it was in America. Mr. Nusai Japa of Tell magazine. Bayo Nanuga at the time, a lot of us left Tokubo Afikuyomi, but we all came back home immediately after. Because we believed that we had more to contribute at home than abroad. So, but now anyone who has the opportunity probably wants to run away, and you can't blame them. I always preach against Japaism, but if you've reached a dead end, all you can do is either break the wall or you want to walk backward. So it's a shame that we're in such desperate situation at the moment that everybody wants to run away when there is really no guarantees that when you get there, you will find something doing.
Thank you very much. Do you think the NSAS thing contributed to the Japa wave?
Yeah, most probably, because during his own generation, I strongly believe that the hope, the flame was still burning. But now I think it's completely put off.
It has evaporated.
Yes, it's no longer in existence. So people they don't have hope. There's nothing. You look inwards and you think, what do I stand to gain? I'd rather leave, start afresh somewhere else. So I think that is what has contributed to the old Japa syndrome.
How about you, Dami?
Yeah, sure, totally. Yeah, totally. But I'm not Japa and I'm staying here.
How about you? So for any plan to Japa?
Okay, I'll talk about. Before 1-2 years ago, I wasn't seriously considering it, but I think beyond the NSAS period, one thing that is now making people Japa more than ever is the economic situation. Everyone you talk to now, every young person you talk to now, seems to be going through one thing or the other, and people can't really see a bright future. That is it. They can't picture the bright future. But for me, the Japa thing, I feel like it can be a blessing in disguise. One thing that saddens me more than the Japa is the fact that some people will go and they never look back. It's not a bad thing to go. We can have people who will go, maybe do well for themselves, but at some point remember that they still have a responsibility to Nigeria. And whatever it is that they can do to support the movement back home, they should actively continue to think about Nigeria and the liberation of Nigerians.
I think that's a very good place to leave the conversation. Thank you, everybody, for
so
joining me
much
today. Thank you, Uncle Dele Momodu.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Olagunwa. Thank you, Dami. Thank you, Adeola. It's great having you guys here, and I love every moment of it.
Thank you.
And I hope you would come here next time to give us these historical perspective.
Oh, anytime.
We really
we must teach history.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
sir.
very important. And I appreciate the invitation from Paul.
You're welcome.
So
All right,
let's give. Thank you.